So, I've got Threat to Reason here, where he's discussing his view on how to solve the religious debate. So, of course, your ears perk up if you're into the new atheism and all that. So, let's talk about this. How do you solve a problem like tyrannical religion? Dan Hind proposes a solution here. Now, faith is the conviction of things hoped for, the assurance of things not seen. Not necessarily talking about inference there, but kind of, a little bit. That's Hebrews 11:1. All this is not to downplay the dangers inherent in faith-based politics. But if we want to resist the tyrannical aspects of the religious right, we have two alternatives. Either we can declare war on religious irrationality and try to break the power of the religious right indirectly by depriving them of their congregations, or we can challenge them directly by establishing in greater detail how they operate and by sharing that information with their followers. So then it goes on to say that if you attack religious irrationality, what you're doing essentially is engaging in a theological debate with all of the moderates and fundamentalists. And at times you're even unifying the two. Whereas if we engaged in a kind of more corporate discussion, more of a tax look at religion and a financial analysis of their systems, then we're engaging the moderates and the liberal believers in a discussion about the mechanics of how the religious leaders defraud them of their money, how they spend their money on, protecting rapist priests, or how they spend it on fueling neoconservatives, or politicians that promise you that abortion will end this term, and then, in fact, it will not, and they will make no action towards doing that. If we do that, then we bring moderates and liberals into the atheist camp, and we unify us against fundamentalists who don't give a shit about how the religion is run. They do things based on true insanity, right? And hopefully we make it so that their power structure, the financial structures of the religions, are challenged. Now, I don't know if that solves the problem of tyrannical religion, and I think in some ways the problem of religious violence has a military solution and an institutional solution where you have checkpoints and you really watch religious extremist populations, and you do so through the arm of the government that Dan Hind considers a monster at times. So the FBI and the CIA. Nevertheless, I think that he does have a point in that all of the, binary digits spilled over discussions with G-Rups and fucking Venom Fang X's doesn't bring those people over. And the people that watch, I don't think it brings them over to the new atheism unless the cause is really lit within them. Instead, I think they see this as a frivolous matter. They say, what are these people arguing about? Oh, it's definitions of God. I believe, but it's not that important to me. Whatever. And they just walk on by. If we discuss the institutional problems that religion has and that it causes for all of us, then maybe we'll get a little bit further. This fits in with the rest of his discussion, because he talks about how, in fact, you and I aren't exactly people that stand up and talk truth to power. Now, I may actually be the idiot that does that. So, but I think that I'm different from you in that respect, viewer. I don't know who you are, but I suspect that you are more like a Francis Bacon kind of Enlightenment person than me, and I'm more like a Thomas Jefferson sort. And let me explain what he means by that, and then what I mean by that, because I've made some serious mistakes. We'll have to dispense with another conceit popular with intellectuals. He's talking about getting rid of illusions, a very good thing. And getting rid of illusions destroys religion if you get rid of all of them. What might be called the myth of Jefferson. Kant and Bacon, with their monarchism and their Christianity, are problematic emblems for Enlightenment. The great skeptic and humanist, Thomas Jefferson, seems a much more congenial model. He was, after all, a dashing enemy of religious Kant, the proud author of the Declaration of Independence, and the United States' third president. Surely he, rather than the loyal subjects of tyrannical princes, should provide us with our model of enlightened adulthood. But the educated classes in Britain and America have far more in common with Kant and Bacon than with Jefferson. Though we might like to imagine ourselves to be autonomous free thinkers, fearlessly willing to speak truth to power, for the most part we depend on powerful institutions for prestige and material well-being. In such circumstances, we deceive ourselves if we imagine that we are able simply to integrate our duty to the public pursuit of truth and our private responsibilities to our patrons. This deception extends to our attitude towards enlightenment itself if it leads us to rail against opponents that have little or no sway over our career prospects and to ignore the threat to reason posed by our employers. And this is important for politics as well. Consider, for instance, the kind of politician that speaks truth to power. Let's say Ron Paul. I'm not as big into Ron Paul. I voted for Obama. I think I might have been able to vote for a Bob Barr or who knows, some extraneous thing. Permanently on the fringe. He speaks truth to power. He calls people on their shit. He calls people on their meat eating. He's that hardcore into speaking truth to power, and good for him, right? But he doesn't get very far. He'll never be president. He is a congressman. You got to hand it to him, but at the same time, most of the people that we want to see an enlightenment sparked within are those that are in the pockets of the lobbyists, that depend on power, that expect that money so that they can campaign in their districts, so that they can get the seat the next time, so that they can line their own pockets. And you and I aren't that different. One time I spoke up in my job, and I said, hey, you're speaking about all these huge contracts. You're making millions of dollars, right? How does that filter down to us? I feel like there's a great disparity between those that have a vested interest and a lot of investment in the stock in this business and those that do the actual work. And that was in a pretty good job. I was fired not that long afterwards. At the same time as I did something else in speaking truth to power. How many of you are willing to do this? Get a face tattoo, and then go up to employers and say, yeah, I am applying for your job. I know that you have a hiring policy that denies me that opportunity. You should not have that hiring policy. Now give me a job. None of you are willing to do that, for good reason, right? None of you are willing to speak truth to power. Yes, they shouldn't censor our names. Surely you agree with that in writing. Yet none of you are currently changing your name to fuck censorship, despite my insistent pleas to do so. So we do have much more in common with Kant and with Bacon than with Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was independently wealthy. He was very influential. He could get away with that kind of stuff. I am willing to sacrifice my life so I can get away with that kind of stuff. If we're going to start the kind of enlightenment that changes our culture significantly, which may ultimately result in religion getting the back door. If we're going to do that, we have to address the actual power systems and the actual flow of money and the actual lobbyists and the real structures in our lives, the institutions. We can't do it by being outsiders, pointing our fingers and wagging them. So you can't do it by being like me, but I'm willing to brainstorm about how you can do it. And I think that it mostly should be in common, frequent discussions of current events. That may be a big step that we can take. I'm sure that this guy has more steps that we can take. I've yet to read his conclusion. I've got 20 pages left. But I thought that that was an important feature of this whole book, and I hope that you're... fuck it. Have a nice day. Bye.